Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good morning to all of our listeners here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Welcome to another edition of Front and Center, where we put very significant issues affecting our country, the Philippines, as our program title says, Front and Center. On behalf of our colleague Jerome Toledo, I am your host for today, Steph Vicente, joining you all for a 30-minute worth of talk discussing important matters with our government officials, people from the private sector, or even members of the academe. As seen through our video live streaming, you may watch and listen to Front and Center through our Facebook page. Just search Radyo Pilipinas World Service. The same goes for our YouTube channel for our replays. Meanwhile, we also have an audio live streaming thanks to the Evox PBS Receiver app. You may download the said app via Google Play Store if you are using an Android phone or via App Store if you are using an iPhone. For today's edition of Front and Center, we are going to talk about the latest Tugon ng Masa or TNM survey on Filipino opinion towards China and the West Philippine Sea. The said TNM survey shows that 85% of Filipinos nationwide distrust China, while 74% see the said country as the greatest threat to the Philippines, primarily due to its aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea or WPS. We will get to the more specific details when we talk to our resource person for today later on in the program, but here are some of the reactions towards the findings of the survey. First, let us read the official statement from the Department of National Defense or DND Secretary Gilbert Eudoro, and I quote, "The latest Okta Research Tugon ng Masa survey is a strong indicator of the acceptance of our people of our efforts to resist attempts to undermine our strategic agency and upend the rules-based international order. It shows a growing public awareness of the realities facing our country in the West Philippine Sea and the unwavering resilience of Filipinos against China's malign influence operations in the country. The sustained public support for the government's approach further strengthens our resolve in defending our rights in the West Philippine Sea under international law and affirmed by the 2016 arbitral ruling. The department remains committed to our mandate of protecting our territorial integrity, sovereignty, and sovereign rights." Meanwhile, as reported by the Philippine News Agency or PNA, Philippine Navy spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, said that the result of this TNA or TNM survey showing majority of Filipinos distrust China is evidence that the public is well aware of issues in the WPS. Trinidad further stated that the findings further strengthen the resolve of the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP to protect and secure what is rightfully ours, adding that, and I quote, "It adds more legitimacy to our stand and fight when you know you have the backing of the vast majority of our people." In another report by the Philippine News Agency, Deputy Speakers Paulo Ortega V of La Union and J. Konghun of Zambales, along with House Deputy Majority Leader Zia Alonto Adyong of Lanao del Sur, said China is the greatest threat to the Philippines and demand a strong defense of the country's rights in the West Philippine Sea. Ortega said that the message is clear: Filipinos don't trust China and they want their leaders to defend the WPS. This is a mandate from the people, and we need to respond with courage, resolve, and unity. He added, quote and unquote, History will judge us not by our words but by how we defended what is rightfully ours. We owe it to our heroes, our fishermen, and our children to stand firm. Meanwhile, Kong Hoon, whose province lies at the front line of Chinese incursions, said the survey reflects the frustration of coastal communities. He said that our fishers are being bullied in our own seas. Now, the whole nation is expressing its anger. This is not a local issue anymore, but a nationwide fight for honor and safety. For his part, Adyong said the issue unites all Filipinos, adding that whether Muslim or Christian, from Mindanao or Luzon, every Filipino stands behind the defense of our seas. All in all, the lawmakers vowed that Congress will translate public sentiment into concrete action, from strengthening maritime defense to supporting alliances that safeguard Philippine sovereignty. As I mentioned earlier, we will get to the specific details of the tugon ng masa survey on Filipino opinion towards China and West Philippine Sea through our resource person for today. We are now being joined by Octa Research Fellow Dr. Ronald Pernia. Dr. Pernia, welcome to the program Front and Center. This is Steph Vicente of Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Hi, Steph. Good morning, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. Thank you for having me.
Thank you also, Dr. Pernia, for gracing our program. Just for the information of our viewers and listeners who might be curious about the entirety of this Tugon ng Masa survey, how did you conduct this survey, which focused on Filipino public opinion on China and the West Philippine Sea?
Thank you once again, Steph. No? So, Togon ng Masa is a regular nationally representative survey which we do again on a regular basis to capture the opinion of Filipino across a range of pressing issues. No? So we do probes on election, as you know, but in this case we do probes on China. So all in all, we conduct this nationally representative survey on about 1,200 respondents across three major islands in the Philippines now, using multi-stage probability sampling. So before the interview, there's several steps or several stages that we have to go through. And lastly, it has a margin of error of 3%. So generally, it's capturing the opinion and the sentiment of the Filipino people.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Of course, now that you have mentioned how this survey was conducted, we will now go to the findings itself. Because as I read this Tugon ng Masa survey, the report to the media, you have three key highlights to this survey, which I will mention now. The first is distrust in China remains high. The second, China still viewed as the greatest threat. And the third one is having the strong support for asserting maritime rights in the West Philippine Sea. We will go to the first one, of course. First, the distrust in China remains high. What are the implications behind this exact finding?
Oh, well, generally, the finding uh, sort of solidified now the clear sentiment of the public that we distrust China as a country, primarily because of the aggressive acts on West Philippine Sea. Uh, but if you also look into the very interesting one of the very interesting findings there as well is if you go deeper into the regional nuances, there are, let's say, in Mimaropa, Bicol region, Western Visayas, they reported about a full 100% distrust. So there's,
Mm.
as scholars, siguro, no, it sort of signals to us that there's something going on, maybe in the issue of distance and geography there, but also the issue of distrust in Cagayan Valley. It's lowest in the region. So I think there's some national trends going on. Generally, it's really distrusting Filipinos distrust China, but there's also several regional nuances and distribution that we may actually look into. The implication there is that uh, it's generally distributed and maybe on the part of our leaders we need to recalibrate some of our actions or targeted towards this region that are proximate to the West Philippine Sea.
Mm-mm. Let us just have a refresher on this. In the Mimaropa, Bicol region, and Western Visayas, as well as Caraga, have a full 100% distrust, while the distrust is lowest in the Cagayan
Yeah.
Valley at 34%. Is this a matter of information dissemination, which is why Cagayan Valley
Mm.
recorded the lowest when it comes to the distrust towards China?
It could be, but it's important to note that we never really asked that one in the survey. So it could be informational, the disinformation, or maybe just the case of geographic proximity of these respondents within the region. And also, if you also actually go deeper as well, there's also other nuances like in Region 7, for instance, and
Mm-hmm.
also in Region 10 and 12. These are Region 10 and 11. These are, of course, the Davao region, so
Mm-hmm.
affiliate, so the Duterte country. So perhaps there's also that issue of the policies of the previous administration, still present among the Filipinos or in this region. But the most interest, I would say, this is me as a parang political scientist. I'm not wearing now a fellow, but as an independent scholar, I'm interested in, let's say, Region 7 because of the thick, shall we say, concentration of Chinese nationals. So maybe there's something going on there, or potentially that we can elaborate further, expand further.
I see. There are other factors
Other factors,
behind
yeah.
the percentages. Now let's go to the second key highlight of the survey, which is China still being viewed as the greatest threat. I also saw in this finding that there's also other countries like Russia
Yeah.
and North
Yeah.
Korea, and I think I saw Japan, Iran, Pakistan
Mm,
as well in a sort of rankings when it
mm.
comes to this. So what is the implication behind this key finding?
Well, it's very clear, no, that because these are China is closest to us, and with the recent and aggression and the maritime dispute, it's clear that it sort of cascaded into uh, public opinion, viewing the the Chinese actions as a threat to the territorial integrity of the Filipinos, more far ahead of Russia and other countries, North Korea, for instance. Uh, but also, if you dig deeper, there's also several, it's like multi-dimensional factors why is this the case. So it's no longer maybe aggression on maritime dispute, but it's also a case of like a majority of Filipinos also consider or distrust China or consider dislike China because of the influx of smuggled products and then increase in criminal cases involving Chinese nationals. So if you think about it in totality, it's no longer an issue, a territorial issue, but it's also economic. So para bang it's now become a a kitchen table issue, so to speak, the issue of China.
Mm-mm. Of course, China is the most obvious one
Yeah,
among
yeah.
the countries. But what may be the factors why the respondents of this survey considered the other countries mentioned as well?
Mm,
Even though, of course, we are somehow indirectly affected by what's happening to the other countries mentioned, but um, what might be the factors why they are still mentioned behind China?
Oh yeah, like for instance, Russia, right, and North Korea. So again, it's a very important question, and also I have to emphasize that we never really asked that one in the survey, so,
Mm-mm.
so that we will not mislead the media as well. But the me as a political scientist, I'm thinking of this as, of course, the proximal issue of the threat. We consider the aggressive actions of China because it's very much proximate to us, so naturally, the public opinion is also gravitating around that. And there's also this, obviously, the emphasis and the emphasis or the strong actions by our government when it comes to uh, upholding, our maritime rights in response to the aggressive actions of China. So it's more existential, territorial, and that's also reflected in the surveys because the case of Russia, North Korea, they are like perceived as the global sort of problem, but in the case of the global threat, but in the context of the Philippines, they are far below the our our neighbor, China.
I guess that's the proper explanation for that the global context, which is
Yeah,
why
yeah.
these countries are still being mentioned despite
Mm-mm.
China being um, the most obvious
Yes.
one for this survey. Now, let's go to the third key finding, which is having the strong support for asserting maritime rights in the West Philippine Sea. I will just read what's under this finding. The great majority of Filipinos, 76%, strongly support defending the country's maritime rights, affirming that the West Philippine Sea is a vital part of the nation's maritime entitlements and backing government efforts to assert them. I read earlier some
Yeah.
reactions from the DND, from the AFP, and also from our lawmakers.
Lawmakers. Yeah.
They have somehow mentioned that these findings is reflects that what the government is doing now is effective when it comes
Mm.
to protecting the sovereignty of the Philippines. So, can you probably expand the
Yeah.
implication of this finding for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah. Thank you. So I think generally there is a clear sort of coherence now in when it comes to their remarks. So number one, it public opinion essentially added public credibility, and also public approval to the actions of our soldiers, in the contested waters. Because I think AFP uh, Commodore Trinidad mentioned that it boosts the morale, no, of our soldiers there. That what they're doing is essentially backed by the public, and I think for many of us who are not in the sort of in the war in that area now, we cannot really imagine how difficult it might have been for them to be existentially in danger. So I think the public opinion serves as a signal, no, that there is legitimacy, there is public backing, and in any actions of our government, the government needs the approval, the consent of the public, and the public opinions solidified, that actions of our government, that this is not just simply a strategic move by the Marcos administration, but there is actually a public approval now, and the public is really clear and united in the decision to defend our maritime rights.
Mm-mm. Now, of course, we have been somehow mentioning this throughout the discussion, but for just for emphasis, um, for our viewers and listeners here in front and center, why is it very important to know the Filipinos' public opinion amid the ongoing tensions surrounding the West Philippine Sea?
Oh. I think it's very obvious now. The thing is, we should we Filipinos should make a clear position on this issue, and also it's very clear that the West Philippine Sea issue is no longer a foreign policy matter, but it has now cascaded into a domestic political issue. So for one, it also had an implication on let's say our political leaders, no, how do they position like when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue, uh, taking into consideration the public opinion, then obviously it will inform their decisions and their positions, and also on our lawmakers and our government officials na it's very important that there is strong public backing kasi nga in any democratic system you need that signal from the public, no, otherwise there is some actions may not be considered as legitimate, no. So the public sentiment signals to the government that hey, we are supporting what you're doing, no, just keep going on. uh, while this is going on, we will sort of back you up as long as this matter has been addressed properly.
And um I think I hope I could really ask
Yeah.
or expound probably the next question. What might be the significance of the findings of this latest Tugon ng Masa survey when it comes to the political landscape um, in the Philippines? Of course, as you have said, this the findings signal something
Yeah.
when it
So
comes
indeed, so
to.
as I mentioned earlier, so it's no longer like an abstract foreign policy matter. So it has now cascaded. No, it has now a matter of not only a territorial issue for ordinary Filipinos, but it's also an issue of economic the jobs, right? Job security and also even societal concerns. So, as I mentioned, the metaphor for this one is like a territorial, existential issue of the Philippines, but it's something close and near and dear to us, especially when it comes to potential issues with our economic, economic growth. And so, on that regard, the survey is sort of signal that Filipinos again are they do have a clear sentiment about the matter. And for me, again, I'm a political scientist now, so I know the limitations of the surveys as well, and you probably are gesturing towards how much of this can be stretched towards other, let's say, other matters or other sort of factors out there. Um, but I have to mention that
Mm,
surveys generally provide a description, right, of the general sentiment. But as a scholar, we have to also let's say go beyond what the numbers are saying and maybe test other sort of other important questions out there. So let's say you might ask, so how does this survey inform us about let's say our civilian preparedness in the
mm,
event of potentially potential invasion if China would really retaliate or would be aggressive in the region, no? um, so this was mentioned by several scholars, like I just mentioned, Professor Renato Cruz de Castro. No, he mentioned that maybe it's about time for us to really look at the contingencies, civilian preparedness. No, because what there it's also important to know that there's an ongoing military exercise with Australia. No, and
yes.
obviously the what is the impact of that when it comes to the alliance, in the region, in the Indo-Pacific region, that is saying a lot. The survey should sort of give us a little bit of a legitimacy, and yeah, so
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And before I let you go, Dr. Pernia, do you have any final message for our listeners and viewers here in our program, Front and Center?
yeah. So first of all, thank you very much, Steph, for inviting me. And For our viewers out there, I think it's very clear now that the survey indicates that there is a clear and united. Few Filipinos are clear and united in wanting to really defend our maritime rights in the region. No? And I think for our leaders, it signals that we have to also align our policies, recalibrate our policies consistent with the sentiment of the public because without the backing of the public, then definitely there's an issue of legitimacy when it comes to our decisions. So I think this the survey should be continued regularly, and we
Yes.
track the shall we say the trend of the public opinion regarding China, and as we go along, probably we'll have a better sort of sense of the sentiment of the public in general. But hopefully, the survey would give us a glimpse of the sentiment of the Filipino people.
And with that, thank you again, Dr. Pernia, for joining us here in our program Front and Center. Mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you very much, Steph, and mabuhay.
And with that, we were just joined by Octa Research Fellow Dr. Ronald Pernia regarding the latest survey or the tugon ng Masa Survey or TNM survey on Filipino opinion towards China and the West Philippine Sea. And that ends today's edition of Front and Center. We would like to thank our production and technical staff who made this program possible. And thank you as well to our station manager, of course, Mr. Ray Sampang. Until the next episode of Front and Center, on behalf of our colleague, Jerome Toledo, this has been your host, Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.